Jake Morrison stared at the euthanasia form in his shaking hands, his finger hovering over the signature line. In the kennel behind the veterinary clinic's steel door, a dog was barking, deep, aggressive sounds that made the receptionist flinch with each blast. This was the dog that 3 families had returned in 2 weeks, the dog that had bitten its last handler, the dog that animal control had deemed irredeemably aggressive and sentenced to death. The dog nobody wanted was going to cost Jake exactly $1 to adopt, the symbolic fee to transfer ownership of an animal scheduled for euthanasia. $1 was almost more than Jake had. The 27-year-old veteran had $14.63 in his checking account, a foreclosure notice on his apartment door, and a prescription for anxiety medication he couldn't afford to fill. But something about the desperate phone call from Dr. Sarah Chen at the county shelter had pulled at him. "Jake, I know you're struggling, but this dog is special. I can't explain it. He's a military working dog, served 2 tours. His handler was killed. And since then, everyone says he's dangerous. But I see something else. I need someone who understands what it's like to come home broken." Jake signed the form. If this story of 2 broken warriors finding redemption moves you, please hit that subscribe button for second chance stories and ring the notification bell. What happens next will challenge everything you think you know about dangerous dogs and second chances. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Jake Morrison had been home from Afghanistan for 3 years, but some days it felt like he'd never really left. The nightmares still came most nights. The explosion, the screams, the weight of his best friend's body armor as Jake tried to pull him from the burning vehicle. The doctors called it PTSD. Jake called it his life now. He'd been a K-9 handler in the Marines, working with detection dogs that saved countless lives by finding IEDs before they could detonate. After his discharge, medical, after the incident that killed his partner and their dog, Jake had tried to rebuild. He'd worked construction, warehouse jobs, even tried college on the GI Bill. Nothing stuck. The panic attacks would hit without warning, leaving him gasping and disoriented, unable to explain to employers why he sometimes just disappeared into his own head. Now, he lived in a rundown studio apartment in a rough neighborhood outside Phoenix, surviving on disability checks that barely covered rent. His ex-wife had left 2 years ago, taking their daughter to Colorado. "I can't watch you disappear anymore," she'd said. "You're here, but you're not really here." The shelter was 15 minutes from Jake's apartment. Dr. Chen met him at the door, her expression a mixture of relief and concern. "His name is Titan," she said, leading Jake through the facility. "Belgian Malinois, 6 years old. He was partnered with Marine Sergeant David Reeves for 3 years. They were both in Afghanistan, 2019 to 2021. Jake felt his chest tighten. Those were his years too. What happened to his handler? Dr. Chen's face darkened. IED, March 2021, outside Kandahar. Titan was there when it happened. Jake stopped walking. March 2021. He knew that attack. Everyone in theater had heard about it. A convoy hit by a sophisticated roadside bomb. 5 Marines killed, 3 dogs lost. He'd been at a different FOB, but the news had torn through the units like shrapnel. "Jesus," Jake whispered. After Reeves died, Titan was retired from service. They tried to rehome him with other handlers, but he became difficult, aggressive. He washed out of 3 placement attempts. The last family had kids, and Titan allegedly lunged at their 5-year-old son. The father called animal control, and they deemed him a public safety risk. They'd reached the kennel area. The barking was deafening, a sound Jake knew well, the sound of a dog in extreme distress. "He's been scheduled for euthanasia twice already," Dr. Chen continued. "I've delayed it both times, but I'm out of options. The county wants him gone by Friday. That's 3 days from now." She stopped in front of the last kennel on the row. Inside, a dark sable Belgian Malinois paced frantically, his muscular body moving with barely contained energy. His ears were laid flat, his lips curled back, showing teeth. Every few seconds, he'd lunge at the kennel door, barking with an intensity that was genuinely frightening. But Jake wasn't looking at the aggression. He was looking at the dog's eyes. He'd seen those eyes before, in the mirror, in the faces of other veterans at the VA hospital. Those weren't the eyes of a vicious animal. Those were the eyes of someone drowning in trauma, trying desperately to communicate something nobody was hearing. "Let me in," Jake said quietly. "Jake, I can't. He's too dangerous." "I said, let me in." Dr. Chen hesitated, then handed him the key. "If he goes for you, back out immediately. I'll have the tranquilizer ready." Jake unlocked the kennel door and stepped inside, pulling it shut behind him. Titan immediately lunged forward, not at Jake, but to the side of him, positioning himself between Jake and the door. The dog's barking intensified, but Jake noticed something others had missed. Titan kept glancing at Jake's face, then back to the door, then to Jake again. This wasn't aggression. This was alerting behavior. Jake slowly lowered himself to sitting position on the concrete floor, keeping his movements deliberate and calm. He didn't reach for Titan, didn't make eye contact. He just sat, breathing slowly, the way his therapist had taught him for managing panic attacks. Titan's barking tapered off to confused whines. The dog circled Jake once, twice, then sat down in front of him, still tense but no longer displaying aggression. "You're not mean," Jake said softly. "You're trying to do your job, aren't you? But nobody's listening." Titan's ears pricked forward, his head tilting slightly. Then he did something that made Jake's throat constrict. The dog very gently placed his paw on Jake's knee. It was a trained behavior, a signal. Titan was alerting to something. Jake knew in that moment exactly what had gone wrong with this dog. Titan wasn't attacking people. He was trying to warn them about something he'd been trained to detect. And when nobody understood, when they punished him, instead of listening, the behavior had escalated into what looked like aggression. "I'll take him," Jake called out. "We're good in here." The first week with Titan was hell. Jake's tiny apartment wasn't built for a 70-pound working dog with severe trauma. Titan paced constantly, barely slept, and would erupt into frantic barking at seemingly random moments. The neighbors complained. The landlord threatened eviction. But Jake was starting to see a pattern. Titan's episodes weren't random at all. They correlated precisely with Jake's own anxiety spikes. 20 minutes before Jake would feel the familiar creep of a panic attack. The racing heart, the tunnel vision, the feeling of walls closing in, Titan would start getting agitated. The dog would pace, whine, and eventually escalate to barking if Jake didn't acknowledge him. At first, Jake thought it was coincidence, but it kept happening. On the fourth day, Jake woke from a nightmare, his heart hammering, sweat soaking his sheets. Titan was already on the bed, pressing his weight against Jake's chest, licking his face with urgent precision. The panic attack Jake had felt building never fully materialized. Titan's pressure, the dog's insistent presence, had interrupted the cascade of symptoms before they could overwhelm him. "Oh my God," Jake breathed, his hands gripping Titan's fur. "You're a psychiatric service dog. That's what you've been trying to do." He pulled out his phone and started researching. What he found changed everything. Titan hadn't been just an explosive detection dog. He'd been cross-trained for mental health alert and response, paired with Sergeant Reeves specifically because Reeves had PTSD from a previous deployment. The dog had been trained to detect the chemical and behavioral changes that preceded panic attacks and flashbacks, then interrupt them with deep pressure therapy and grounding behaviors. But when Reeves died, Titan had been reclassified as just a standard MWD. The people trying to rehome him didn't know about his specialized training. When Titan tried to perform his job, alerting to stress hormones, positioning himself to provide pressure therapy, people interpreted it as aggression. The attack on the 5-year-old hadn't been an attack at all. Jake was willing to bet the kid had been having a medical episode, maybe a severe anxiety attack or even a seizure, and Titan had been trying to help. When the parents pulled the dog away, thinking he was attacking, Titan had resisted, escalating the situation. Jake called Dr. Chen. "I need Titan's full military service records. Can you get them?" It took 2 weeks and calls to 3 different Marine Corps offices, but eventually, Jake had documentation that changed everything. Titan was one of only 12 dogs in the entire military who'd been dual certified for both explosive detection and psychiatric service support. His handler, Sergeant Reeves, had been part of a pilot program, pairing combat veterans with PTSD with specially trained dogs who could both work in theater and provide mental health support. The records included something else: incident reports from the convoy attack that killed Reeves. According to witnesses, moments before the IED detonated, Titan had been acting erratically, pulling away from the convoy and refusing commands. Reeves had been trying to correct the dog's behavior when the bomb went off. Titan had detected the IED. He'd been trying to alert, to get his handler away from the danger. But in the chaos and noise of convoy operations, Reeves had misread the behavior as the dog being disobedient. Those were Titan's last moments with his handler, being corrected for trying to save his life. Jake sat on his apartment floor, the report in his hands, tears streaming down his face. Titan lay beside him, his head resting on Jake's leg. "You tried to save him," Jake whispered. "You did everything right, and nobody listened. And then they sent you home and called you broken." For the first time in 3 years, Jake felt something shift inside his chest. Titan wasn't just a dog who needed saving. He was a mirror, reflecting Jake's own story back at him. They'd both been good at their jobs. They'd both survived trauma that killed their partners. They'd both been sent home and told they were too broken to be useful. And they'd both been trying desperately to prove they still had value, still had purpose, while everyone around them saw only damage. That night, Jake made a decision. If the system had failed Titan this catastrophically, how many other military and police working dogs were out there, misunderstood and mistreated because nobody knew how to read their behavior? And how many veterans like Jake were suffering because they couldn't access the kind of service dog support that had cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to develop in Titan? With his last $47 and a maxed-out credit card, Jake built a basic website. He called it Titan's Promise, rehoming elite working dogs with veterans who understand. The premise was simple. Jake would find retired or failed military and police K9s, dogs deemed too aggressive, too traumatized, or too specialized to place in normal homes, and match them with combat veterans struggling with PTSD. He'd provide basic training support to help veterans understand their dogs' working behaviors, and he'd advocate for these dogs to be recognized as service animals rather than liabilities. He had no funding, no facility, no formal training credentials, just a $1 dog, a theory, and the desperate hope that he was right. The website went live on a Tuesday. By Friday, Jake had received 47 emails from veterans interested in the program, and 12 from police departments asking if he wanted dogs they were planning to euthanize for behavioral issues. One email stood out. It was from a veteran named Marcus Chen in Colorado, Dr. Chen's brother, who ran a small veterans advocacy nonprofit. Marcus had seen the website and wanted to know more. Within a week, they were on a video call. "My sister told me about you and Titan," Marcus said. "She thinks you're onto something. I've been working with veterans for 5 years, and the number one thing I hear is that they can't afford service dogs. The wait lists are years long, and the cost is $20,000 to $50,000. Meanwhile, we're euthanizing working dogs who already have the training." "It's insane," Jake agreed. "Titan was 18 hours from being killed. He's literally the most qualified psychiatric service dog I've ever seen, and they were going to destroy him because nobody understood what they had." Marcus leaned forward, his expression intense. "What if we could scale this? What if we could build a real program, facility, trainers, veterinary support, the whole thing? I have some donors who might be interested." "I don't have any credentials," Jake warned. "I was a K9 handler, but I don't have formal trainer certification or anything." "Can you get certified?" I guess, if I had money for classes." "Let me work on something. In the meantime, document everything you do with Titan, every behavioral milestone, every PTSD episode he helps with, everything. We'll need data to convince donors this works." Over the next 6 months, Jake kept meticulous records. Titan's interventions prevented an average of 3 panic attacks per week. The dog's deep pressure therapy reduced the severity of Jake's nightmares by approximately 70%. Jake's medication needs decreased. He started sleeping through the night. For the first time since Afghanistan, he felt like he might actually be able to build a life. But the real breakthrough came when Jake posted a video online. It showed Titan performing an alert sequence, the dog detecting Jake's rising anxiety, positioning himself for pressure therapy, and successfully interrupting what would have been a severe panic attack. Jake had filmed it as documentation for Marcus's nonprofit, but he decided to post it publicly with an explanation of what people were seeing. The video went viral. Not millions of views, but within the veteran community, it spread like wildfire. News outlets picked it up. Jake started getting calls from reporters, from veteran advocacy groups, from dog trainers who specialized in service animals. One call changed everything. "Mr. Morrison, my name is Catherine Reeves. I'm David Reeves's mother." Jake's blood ran cold. "Mom, I'm so sorry about your son. He was—" "I know what he was," Catherine interrupted, her voice thick with emotion. "And I know you have his dog. I saw your video. That's David's boy. That's his Titan.